This is Memory Matters. Why worry? Well, our memory is important to all of us. If we don't remember to do things in our daily living, we can get in trouble. So we really need our memory to help us live quality lives. And that's why we need to think about it, not necessarily worry or over worry. And many people think that with aging, all of us will have a problem with our memory, and that's not so. 50% of aging individuals never have a problem with their memory, and if they do, that's a good sign, right? What side of the 50% are we on? We don't know. The one issue that many older adults have is problems with retrieval. I was trying to think of Lily Tomlin's name. I couldn't think of it. And I had to go online and think of a program that she was on. And I said, because I took the 10-week class I'm going to tell you about, it's like, Lily, she's a flower. I'm just going to always remember, if I want to find her name in this brain of mine, flower Lily. So anyway, there are ways we can help our brain if we're struggling with that retrieval as well. So there are temporary medical conditions and mental health issues that can impair memory that aren't a dementia, because I think that's why probably many of you are here. Everybody's worried about Alzheimer's disease. I don't want it. I don't want to even think about it for myself or somebody I love. But there are things that happen in the course of our bodies aging, and even in younger people's brains, that cause problems with memory. And that's why you need a really good evaluation. And I'll go over some of those issues in a minute. Any sudden change of memory, if all of a sudden somebody you love or yourself can't speak, can't remember the name of somebody, and they were fine the day before, you need to probably call your doctor or get that person to ER to have them evaluated. In my mother's case, she was having a stroke. She was at my house, but fully competent in her activities of daily living. She got herself up, she got dressed, and then she was disoriented and didn't know names. Got her to GR, over to the ER at John Muir, and she had had a stroke. And so you have an opportunity to have that corrected if you get to the hospital in time with these sudden things that can happen. So any sudden change of memory needs immediate attention. So what we're going to try to cover without me, I tell stories that make me talk longer. I'll try not to do that as much. So what we're going to talk about is memory changes, what to do when you notice memory issues, what can you do to slow down the progressive memory disorders. So if you're already diagnosed with something, can you slow it? Can you slow it down to the pace, I guess, that you die before it gets you, so to speak, because you're doing some lifestyle changes. And when should you get a formal diagnosis? I'm going to talk about that. And what are the best ways to keep a brain healthy? And I'm probably going to talk about a couple of things that most people aren't aware of that were rather new in research discovery and not so much in publication yet. So I'll talk about those. There are two things. And what are the resources for if you're struggling with a memory issue or a family member what are those resources in our community? So these on this slide are the not just these. These are reversible causes of memory changes. Medications or combination of medications can cause a memory change. Alcohol abuse, long-term alcohol abuse or addiction definitely is going to have brain changes and affect memory. Mental health issues. There are mental health issues that also cause cognitive changes that involve memory as well. Vitamin deficiencies can be a cause of memory loss, tumors, brain tumors for sure, Lyme's disease. I recently had somebody I was working with Lyme's disease and definitely struggling with memory. Hypo or hyperthyroid, again, people struggle with thyroid, getting it regulated. That's really important if you have a thyroid issue to make sure that it's being titrated correctly. Normal pressure hydrocephalus, and this was one when I first started the Alzheimer's Respite Center over at Grace Presbyterian. There was a gentleman in my group. He was a retired CEO of a major company, and he definitely had short-term memory loss. It was profound, and the doctor told the wife he had Alzheimer's disease. Well, when he came to the program, he beat me at gin rummy. That is not easy. That takes cognitive processing. But he had no short-term memory, and his gait, this is why I'm standing here, was big, like this. It's a big gait. And now those are indicators of normal pressure hydrocephalus. I noticed it. I sent him to the Northern California Alzheimer's Diagnostic Center that at that time was in Berkeley. Now it's in Walnut Creek. That's convenient for us on this side of the tunnel. And anyway, I sent him there for diagnosis. He had normal pressure hydrocephalus, which is water on his brain. They put in the shunt and he came back to normal. Now he was given that diagnosis, and the wife could have continued to live with him with that, but his quality of life was quite diminished, and now it had returned. And I think they continued to come back. We're going back a few years as a volunteer with the program. So a whole different, he could play gin rummy with other people then and play checkers. So there are things like that, infections, UTIs, a urinary tract infection, prominent cause of confusion, delusions, and definitely problems with memory. And older adults, especially women, might not have the sensation of a urinary tract infection that they had at 30 because we have loss of sensory to our skin and touch. And just the behavior is indicated that the person needs to get a urinalysis to see if they have a urinary tract infection. And if you're in this lecture today because you're already caring for somebody that has a memory disorder and suddenly they become more confused, be suspicious of UTI. In my career, which is over 40 years working with older adults and lots of people with memory issues, that has been, I would say, 50 to 75% of the reasons why their memory got worse quickly, a UTI. Anemia is also a cause sometimes of cognitive dysfunction, and there are many, many more. That's why a really good medical evaluation, we all should get a good medical exam once a year, but if you're suspicious of something more with memory, to get a really good workup, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So what do you do when you notice memory changes? When you first notice memory changes with even like me struggling for Lily Tomlin's name, and then I found a way to find it, or a memory trick to remember it, but to write the day and the time if it's happening frequently, and especially if there's any new medications that you just started or your family members started. What was different about that day? Just write it down in a little notebook. And if it doesn't happen again, it doesn't happen again. But this information is really important to someone who might be making a diagnosis in the future. So again, any sudden or severe memory changes, you're going to call 911 and get medical advice. You're not going to just say he's having a bad day or she's having a bad day. You need to really get it looked at. If you have a family history of progressive dementia, you know that mom or dad or somebody in your family had Alzheimer's disease, you're going to want to really work on the lifestyle changes that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And that most of these people is the APOE4 gene that have that gene, and you can have a double gene, a triple gene, or a 4. If you have all 4, there's a good possibility that you will also develop Alzheimer's disease. So I'm going to give you two new pieces of information that could even improve that predictability to not go down that path, to stay either where you're at now or get better. Listen for more here. So mild cognitive impairment. When people are given this diagnosis, a doctor usually does a test called the MoCA, and that's the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. It's a paper test, and it could be done by an MD or a medical professional or a social worker, psychologist. Anyway, and it's a quick test, and the only deficit in that test is short-term memory. That's when somebody is given a diagnosis of MCI. And MCI is not dementia. You do not have dementia when you have MCI. You have mild cognitive impairment. And 50% of the individuals with that diagnosis never advance to a progressive dementia. And they even have better luck at not progressing to a dementia if they follow some of the lifestyle changes I'll be talking about quickly. So when you get the diagnosis of MCI, you have two opportunities at that point. Number one, to change your lifestyle. And number two, there are some new drugs out that actually, most of us know that Alzheimer's disease is plaques and tangles in our brains that happen way before memory loss is exposed to ourselves or to somebody else. But it's really important at this time to get that diagnosis as soon as you get the result of the MoCA test or whatever test a medical professional does with you, because not all individuals are candidates for this medication. And I understand that Medicare is covering it, but not everybody is going to be candidate for those drugs. And they're drugs that have to be infused. So you have to go to an infusion clinic. They're either given once a month or twice a month. The two individuals I know that are on it are on twice a month, and they do that for 18 months. And that is erasing the plaques and the tangles. It really attacking that part of the brain. Not all researchers believe that Alzheimer's disease is just the plaques and tangles, because at autopsy they see with competent people that they do a brain, they look at the brain after death, that they have plaques and tangles too, but they never were diagnosed. So there's a lot of it's a gut issue, it's a endocrine issue. So healthy lifestyles that work on healthy guts with a healthy diet, and getting frequent blood draws to know that you're not either anemic or diabetic, and keeping that under control are going to help you stay healthier. So again, the most important thing with MCI is you have two opportunities, and you have a third opportunity to take a class that I'm doing here that starts next week, but I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So again, this is a crucial time, I think, for individuals and couples when one has this diagnosis, because there's some life planning to do as well that happen at this time, which is really important. So these are the changes in lifestyles to slow or reverse memory issues, and they're very important. Exercise daily. And if you're not into exercising, start slowly. 10 minutes twice a day, that's 20 minutes. Get yourself, I have a smartwatch here, an Apple Watch. It counts my steps. Make sure you're getting at least 5,000 steps a day. You can do it inside your house if you can't go outside. So moving is really important. As part of that exercise, we just know working on balance is important, and especially for us women to work on upper body strength, to do some weight training if possible. The healthy diet, this seems to be a really, really important aspect of of all health, of a healthy heart, of a healthy body, and a healthy brain. And the Mediterranean diet seems to be the most widely subscribed or prescribed diet. And this little pyramid, you can see it better there than you can on my slides, but it's mostly fruit and vegetables. You see that in healthy grains. And then there's fish, and then there's poultry and eggs, and way at the top is meat and sweets. And so you might be having to upside down your diet. And you might want to do that slowly with maybe one meal a day that you're saying we're not going to do meat or anything that's above the line of vegetables there. And you also see in that diagram, and because I have a health coach, of course, and what she wants or what she says to do, and I think it's clear in there, is a healthy fat at every meal. And this isn't clear when you read these diets, but so that means nuts, avocados, olive oil, a fatty fish, one of those in every single meal. And you can easily throw your walnuts in your cereal if you can do nuts. If not, my husband used to always have a quarter of an avocado with his breakfast and with his lunch. And it might be in the salad as well at night. Never knew when that avocado was going to show up. But, you know, and nuts are a healthy snack too, again, if your body can tolerate them. So the diet is really, really important. And this diet allows alcohol. It's when you read about it more, it says 1 glass a day, but they've changed their view on that with brain health. Some articles you read and research says none, and others say every other day. So 48 hours, you know, just every other day you can have a glass of wine. The Mind diet, if you look up the Mind diet, there's no alcohol in it at all. And the research that was done at one of the UC systems in Southern California, I can't remember which of the universities that it was, but they definitely had them on everybody in that research project, the Mind diet. And I don't know if anyone caught the 60-minute segment, it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, that looked at the research they were doing down there. And it was pretty amazing how they turned people's memory problems around with diet, exercise, and some of these other things I'm going to talk about in a minute here. But I really wanted to focus on that. And the other thing that's not on this, and you don't see much about, but I've heard more than one lecturer, and from good places like Stanford, talk about eliminating artificial sweeteners, especially in relationship to Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, but also Parkinson's. So none of those artificial sweeteners. I eliminated them to, you know, and you have to really look at like power bars and those things. Sometimes there's no sugar, but there's artificial sweeteners in them. So make sure if they're no sugar, they're really no sugar, and they're sweetened with nuts or a fruit. Dates are kind of high sugar, but it still is a natural food item. And then social engagement. You're all socially engaged right now, so you get 1 point for today's stimulation of your brain. So really staying engaged. And staying engaged means more than just coming to a class. It means getting involved in something like the Lafayette-Orinda Village, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute if you don't know about it. But since it is housed here, most people at LPC know about the village. But getting involved in the activities that the village has to offer, and they do, you know, meditation, mindfulness, exercise, chair exercise, walking the reservoir exercise, lots of social opportunities and learning opportunities are you're invited to through that organization. And we have the Thursday group here at LOPC, and I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and they told me You know, there's a lot of people over 100 years old that go to that Thursday program. They're socially engaged. They're doing something to stimulate. They're meeting people. And that is sometimes the reason why seniors who live alone move to assisted living or retirement in community like Rossmore. So social engagement, really important. Every single day you're talking to somebody, you're seeing somebody. And then sleep. I do have a slide on sleep, and I'll go back to that. But we need 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. And it's okay that you can get up and use the bathroom, go, as long as you go back to sleep. That's what's important. Because during REM sleep, that's where memory gets stored into our brain. We need that deep REM sleep. So really important to have good sleep. I have a slide presentation on sleep. If anybody wanted that, you can get it. It doesn't have any recording of the talk, but there's slides on getting good sleep. And you can ask your doctor about sleep too. Sleep medications are good to use for a short period of time to break a pattern of not being able to sleep and then get back on a healthy sleep cycle. Positive attitudes towards aging. I'm going to show you the slide. I'm not going to read this to you right now. I'm going to show you a slide on that. So that the new information that I have on another slide is coming from the American Medical Association. I was so happy to see that because I knew that with my 40 years experience. When I would meet a home visit or somebody would come into my office, I had a big business called Elder Care, and I sold it almost 6 years ago now. We had 200 employees, but we did a lot of education and we did a lot of consultations. And people that had positive attitudes about aging, they weren't afraid of aging. They weren't thinking of aging as a place where I'm being put out to a pasture. They were looking forward to travel, to learning, to maybe even downsizing so they could see the children more. They were really positive about aging. That really affects your health and your brain, positive attitude towards aging. And it was the AMA, the American Medical Association, that did that research. And they just confirmed what I learned just by working with people over the years, that these people were aging well because of their attitude. Mindfulness is meditation. It could be yoga. It could be prayer. It can be lots of different modalities of doing mindfulness activities. But the research that was done at UCSF and the research that was done in Southern California say at least a half hour a day of meditation. And it'll be, again, 15 minutes and 15 minutes, that you're just quieting your mind, turning your mind off if you can, in some form of meditation. And again, prayer is a way to do that, but it's a little bit more active than focusing on your breath. That kind of cleanses your brain, shuts your brain down. All of you that are here want to know more information. So you probably have pretty active brains. They're working at night when they should be sleeping. And what we want to do is give those brains some time off during the day. So mindfulness is really, really important. I'm going to read you some research in a minute. And then brain stimulation games, luminosity, Sudoku, other kinds of brain games are great. That you're doing something, again, the researchers at UCSF in San Francisco were saying the games that you have to catch something or capture, like the kids like to shoot things. I don't care to shoot things, but I can capture things. And on luminosity, I don't know if you have anybody uses that, but they have a little race car thing that you have to get the car out of, I don't know what it is, a tumbling weed, and the car out of the lane from another car, and you have to move really fast in that game. That's really good for our brains. And it's very challenging, the game I play most days. So why mindfulness is important? I know it's hard to read this, so I thought I'd read it to you. It's a popular headline in the media now, mindfulness used to be thought as an Eastern practice, but Western medicine now has adopted it. So it really helps improve well-being, reduces stress, and can actually, now they've studied it, it could change our brains. It can measure brain changes both as a function, how well our brains perform certain actions, and the structure, the physical makeup of the brain. That's really pretty powerful from just doing some meditation a couple of times a day, or maybe just one solid hour during a day. It seems like a lot of time to be sitting and focusing on your breath. Andy, do you do it for a whole hour? No, half hour. So a half hour is more manageable, I think, to do. Even 15 minutes twice a day, or if you have a yoga practice to try to do the exercise of stretching, you could do simple yoga and empty your brain with breathing, by focusing on your breathing. So again, it's the gray matter to learn and remember and make decisions and regulate our emotions. So more the gray stuff, the greater density of that, is a good thing. And structural changes in the brain with medication has always been an appealing possibility because it would underscore the extent of human neuroplasticity that our brains could regenerate after they've been damaged. That arises purely as a consequence of a mental practice. And this is coming from, these are coming from major universities, and I have a link to a really long article about how mindfulness is so important to our brains. So we want to keep them good. So the sleep study, and again, it was UC Berkeley that did I think, Andy, you sent me a really good article on sleep from UC Berkeley some years ago. Do you remember that? No. You all will send me things probably, and I will remember one little thing and you remember a lot more. But good sleep is really important because the earlier research says this amyloid beta, these plaques in our brain, fluctuate during the sleep-wake cycle in mice, and the sleep deprivation significantly increases the amyloid beta levels. And as the first sentence in this little slide says, just one night of bad sleep might be generating some of that plaque and those tangles. Pretty powerful if it does. I have some really nights that my brain won't turn off. I get up and I read, actually, and then I go back to bed. But you're supposed to, with my sleep class, you're supposed to have dim lights for 2 hours before you go to bed. So you have to put a bright light on to read, then you wonder what you're doing. But then it works for me, and if something works for you and puts you back to sleep, fine. My mother would get up and have a teaspoon of peanut butter. I have not seen any research on that, but it worked for her. So this is the research from the American Medical Association, but I think that the percent was really staggering to me. Those that had a positive thoughts had 30.2% greater chance of recovering from mild cognitive impairment. That's amazing, just with positive thinking. Wow. And in my 3-week class that I do for couples when one has MCI, I talk about these little affirmation cards you can buy online at Amazon. And that if you tend to not be positive, because you might have had a parent that was a worrier and they were never positive, they were always talking about something negative, and that might be in you, and that you can't look at every day as positive, find things that will help you keep that positive outlook. Definitely being a Christian and using prayer and Peter's sermons, trying to bring something home during the week that you could focus on, is usually always pretty positive. So your beliefs about aging could actually help recover from MCI. And this is coming out of Yale, it's coming out of Stanford, it's coming out of UCSF. And those with, I told you about the APOE4 gene, that means you have a parent, it's in your genetic makeup. If you have a positive lookout on aging, the recovery was even greater I mean, and that's pretty, the genes tell our body what to do and what's going to happen to us. And we can change that trajectory. And again, 44% lower risk of dementia. That's huge. So we got to teach our kids how to be positive. Hard, a lot of struggles for younger people. When to get a diagnosis? And I say this because sometimes I say don't. I'll get to that in the last bullet. Usually the earlier the better for you and your family member to be diagnosed. Number one, it makes us as couples or individuals kind of get our legal stuff into order because we don't know which path we're going down or going on. And it just reminds us we need to take care of some business. So that's really a good thing. You can change your lifestyle behaviors, that whole little list of things I mentioned. Or you might be a candidate for one of the new drugs showing promise for some individuals. You have to probably be pretty healthy to qualify an MCI diagnosis and pretty healthy and probably not on many other medications to be part of their the using of these drugs. The university hospitals, when I'm working with a family, especially a family that's out of state, I always refer them to a university hospital diagnostic center because it's multidisciplined. It's just not a neurologist only. It's a geriatrician, it's a neuropsychologist, it's an RN, it's a social worker. They're taking in everything before they give back a diagnosis and a plan for those families. Kaiser has a memory clinic. They sometimes do the testing online. I don't like that. I had a client that came to me, her very, very depressed, severely depressed. And her husband had tried everything. She comes into my office and her walk was like this, looking down and shuffling. And I called the doctor at Kaiser, and I said, are you concerned that maybe she's not just depressed, but she might have Parkinson's? Have you seen her gait? And the doctor told me she had never seen her walk. She'd always been on the exam table when she saw her. No, make sure the doctor sees you or your family member walk. Your gait's very important to the whole diagnostic picture. So that's why I don't like that Kaiser does these tests online. There's more to us than just the writing and the answers on that test. Okay. Your physician might refer you to a neurologist or a geriatric neuropsychologist for a diagnosis. That could be fine. If you still feel curious, you could still probably go to one of the diagnostic clinics from UC Davis has the clinic in Walnut Creek, but UC San Francisco, Stanford, one of the big hospitals. I like the multidiscipline diagnosis myself. You want the team to rule out all possible causes of reversible dementia. You don't want that client like I had that beat me at Jim Rummy with an Alzheimer's diagnosis. He didn't have that because he wasn't looked at completely. You might want to delay a diagnosis if you're thinking of moving to a continuing care retirement community. At one point, they wouldn't take anybody with any signs of dementia. They've changed their outlook as Alzheimer's or dementia became more prevalent, and now they have memory units in them. But some still might not take an individual that has this diagnosis. And if you're thinking about buying long-term care insurance, they usually won't insure you if you already have a diagnosis. So you get those things done, you get that move done before you have a diagnosis, you get that insurance before you get a diagnosis as well, and then you go get your diagnosis after you get whatever it is you want. So there could be a reason to delay a diagnosis, but I prefer the earlier the better because you have the opportunity to make these changes that will change your whole life. So these are some resource links that, again, you're not going to be able to probably write down here, so I could send you the slides. This is the one that Andy sent me. See, it was in 23, Andy, from Berkeley. And then the genetic testing is, Pam McDonald is my health coach, the nurse practitioner, and there's more about the APOE gene 234 and me, and the diet as well underneath there. Mindfulness, the Calm app, I understand if you are a Kaiser member, that's free for you. The rest of us have to pay like 60 some odd dollars for it for a year. There is a free component to Calm, and many of the family caregivers that are on my support group, or it's a Zoom support group, they use Calm to fall asleep. They're sleep stories. You use it? The sleep stories, and I've only listened to one, but it was a really good story. It was a very good story, but the voice, it's like your mother reading to you before you went to bed when you were 4. You know, it's really a nice cadence to their voice. So Calm is great. Headspace, a lot of people use as well. I haven't tried that one. There's the Mind Diet, connected to Harvard. Advanced healthcare directives. This is another thing that I really promote. Prepareforyourcare.org was developed by the regents of the University of California, and it is an advanced healthcare directive that is in big font, it's in color, and it has clip art in it. Looks like Linda wrote it. 'Cause I use all those things when I try to do a handout of any sort. And it's lots of pages, and it's lots of information that is helpful along the whole spectrum of life to your family, because it forces you to make decisions on right now, right today, what would Linda want if I fall down here? I want everything. But if I have a diagnosis of something, whatever, I don't know what it would be, something I might want to. My grandmother used to say, when the train comes, my bag's packed, let me get on it. There was no advance directive then, but she gave that to her family by saying, just let me go if it's my time. Don't try to bring me back. Or you can say, I want everything. I had a client that had advanced Parkinson's, and she had a gastric feeding tube. Her 2 kids were both MDs. They thought their mother was crazy. She wanted everything. She wanted everything possible to keep her alive. So you have that opportunity. My husband and I had this filled out, and we took it to our attorney, and he only took certain pages and slipped it in his own document. Attorneys are like that. If there's any attorneys out there, they have a reason why they want you to use their document. But one of the pages in there is like, if I get dementia, what kind of care would I want? And I wrote in mine, because I have 40 years experience, put me any place, tell me any story you have to put me there. You know, tell me my house needs to be replumbed or rewired or whatever. Just make sure I have really good care, but you could tell me, I call it fiblets, therapeutic fiblets, when you tell not the truth to somebody with advanced dementia. Put me there, but make sure I have good care, and that my husband could do whatever he wanted to do. And he wrote for him, Linda needs to take care of herself, period. I had more detail about taking care of one another. And there's some links there for different brain workout games. And I would say that it would be good to play one of those games 10 to 15 minutes a day. You could choose the game you're playing. Again, getting your mind moving. Other resources, again, I talked about the Lafayette-Orinda Village. Most people know about it. If you don't, it's Lafayette-Orindavillage.org. And they'll be offering a 10-week brain enhancement class. I've taught that many times when I had elder care. Taught it once or twice here as well. It's a great game. It's the one that's going to help you learn to, when you want to think of Lily's name, Lily, you find a way to enhance your memory in that class. And people with MCI have found it helpful. People that have maybe middle stage dementia find it too challenging. So if you're thinking about that class for somebody that's already, what I didn't tell you is when you have MCI, you only have problems with one issue of cognitive impairment, and that's usually memory. Once you have a second impairment, like you can't do your meds, or you can't sequence enough to be cooking, or driving gets impaired because of getting lost, then you move into the early dementia. So once there's a second thing in brain impairment, you move on to the course of dementia, which could be a 20-year journey. So it's a long journey. And it might have started before that first MCI diagnosis, actually. We don't know. So again, that's a great class. Look for it. Catherine, who's the coordinator there, tells me it'll start in June, and it goes 10 weeks. And it'll be at the Lafayette Community Center, is where the class will happen. Look for brain health workshops. I mean, Kaiser, I don't mean to downgrade Kaiser. I think they do a lot of good things, and I think they have some classes that they offer on brain health. The Buck Institute in Marin, wonderful cutting-edge research on the brain and the body and aging. You want to get on their mailing list. The class I'm doing for couples starts on the 18th, so it's a week from Tuesday. And one person in the couple has to have the diagnosis to come into my class. I talked to a couple member of LPC yesterday, and neither one of them have a diagnosis, but time to time they say they have problems with their memory. The reason why this is for those with MCI, I think is more important for couples to come when one has a diagnosis, because you can then work together for betterment of both of your health. And I'm going to talk more about things you need to do, that long-term planning with couples. And we're going to do more stuff on mindfulness as well, as that we're able to not do in this class. So the support group I do twice a month here at LOPC is online for family caregivers caring for somebody with dementia. We have a few people on that support group that are caring for people with Parkinson's. And there's some adult children, but mostly spouses. Well, there's probably only 3 adult children, but it doesn't matter really. Everybody supports one another. It's a great group. And the MCI class, what we found in that class was that we have a support group for caregivers, but we didn't have a support group for people that have short-term memory. So we started a support group. So Jane leads a support group for those that came out of my first class, for anyone that's struggling, and they love that class because they understand that the other person sitting next to them is struggling just like they are, and what they're doing to support one another, and what the spouses then move. They come here in person and meet on Mondays. That support group is full. We can't take any more. So if you know any social workers, pastors, nurses that want to lead another group, we might need a second group for people with MCI, because I have a waiting list. I have 2 people on the waiting list already for a new group. I will say that LOPC does a lot to support families when somebody is struggling with any of the dementias or pre-dementias. I have the 5-class series on dementia. That's my website. You can go on and register it for any of those classes. They're all free. It's usually on the 2nd Friday of the month. And the first class is What is Dementia? Since I didn't talk to you about all the different dementias today, because we just don't have time in 1 hour. But you can go on my website and see one of the recordings of that class, What is Dementia? There's some really good slides in there, research-based slides on what is dementia. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And then sign over there if you want those slides. Thank you.